So welcome everyone to our Black History program. I am so blessed to have Carmen and Barbara who put this program together. After speaking to my friend, Mr. William Gould the fourth, who I learned is a graduate of Long Branch High School like myself, I am so excited to hear their story. I've heard someone say that folks that are really established and have a rich history of accomplishment, they don't need an introduction that goes on for 10 pages or for 4 hours. And I'm not going to do that today for Mr. Gould the fourth and the fifth, I think, might be presenting with us today. Not because they don't deserve it, but because they have it. And I really want you to hear the words that come from their mouths and their experience. Their story is a remarkable story, really starting with William Benjamin Gould, who was born a slave, who escaped slavery. And from the two of these beautiful gentlemen, we're going to hear a story of 5 generations about slavery, freedom, triumph, patriotism, family, and achievement. And I hope we hear some stories about Long Branch High School, Mr. Gould, too, and your experience there. So without further delay, I am delighted. We're all blessed to hear this remarkable story from these two gentlemen.
Well, thank you very much, Judge. I hope can I be heard now? It's a pleasure to be here with you, and I have great memories of Long Branch. We lived on both Bath Avenue and Long Branch, and subsequently in Elberon on Woodgate Avenue. And I enjoyed every visit that I would make back there subsequent to my graduation from Long Branch High School. This is, as Judge Thornton has said, a story of the Gould family, and it really begins in, it's a story not only of William B. Gould, who the judge has pointed out and who's in the background there behind my son, William B. Gould V. It's a story that begins in 1837, his birth in Wilmington, his escape from slavery in 1862, and then his eventual settling in New England in Dedham in 1923. But it's a story that begins with my father, William B. Gould III, who was born in Cambridge, Massachusetts in 1902.
Excuse me, Barbara, can you put up the PDF? It's failing on my end. Sorry about that.
No worries.
It's a story that really begins with William B. Gould III, who was born in Cambridge, Massachusetts in 1902, and who brought his family, my sister, myself, and my mother, to Long Branch in 1940, where William B. Gould III was able to work for the Signal Corps as a civilian, both in Fort Monmouth and also in Camp Evans. And he was one of the Black pioneers in that capacity in the world of electronics. He was someone who was born in the age of Marconi, of course, at the beginning of the previous century, and who and who came out here to California. And when he would visit here, he would regroup with some of his old friends to install radar during World War II, and then at the conclusion of the war, move up to the Aleutian Islands, where he did a similar job when our relations with the Soviet Union became unfriendly at that time. And of course, he was involved in efforts that the United States made from Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, in countering Sputnik in the late 50s. But it was William B. Gould III who found the diary of William B. Gould. we would, in those summers when we lived in Long Branch, frequently go back to Massachusetts to visit my great uncles and great aunts in Dedham, Massachusetts. And we had many meetings with them there. There's a picture of my father, William B. Gould III, in the 1940s during the war. And we would go back there. My father had a very close relationship with the great uncles and great aunts who were the sons and daughters of William B. Gould, the first William B. Gould who escaped from slavery. When one of those uncles, Lawrence, died in 1958, he bequeathed all his property to my father. And at that point, my father discovered in his home this diary. It had been unknown to us. It was a diary that was kept by William B. Gould between 1862 and 1865. I think we have some photos of the diary itself, but in any event, it is something that is, this is, of course, a photo of William B. Gould, but he was the individual who, during the war, kept the diary. It is the only diary, so far as we're aware, kept by any enslaved black individual who served in the war, at least served in the United States Navy. William B. Gould, as we've indicated earlier, born in 1837 in Wilmington as a young man. We know now today that he worked as a plasterer, a mason. This was the trade that he was taught while he was in slavery. We're a couple of photos off here, and we want to talk about first the escape that he made. The escape that he made from slavery. We know now that he escaped from downtown Wilmington at Orange Street, proceeding down the Cape Fear River. Yes, this is the right photo. And this shows you a portion of the Cape Fear River. And we also have a map of it, which goes 28 nautical miles into the Atlantic Ocean. And he proceeds with 7 other men. And other boatloads come subsequently of men who are seeking freedom and seeking to serve for what William B. Gould called Uncle Samuel. He often in his diary speaks of serving for Uncle Samuel. And he boards the USS Cambridge after he's come down the Cape Fear River and escaped past the detection by the Confederate sentries on both sides of this river. He boards a ship called the USS Cambridge. She is a steam frigate which has been resuscitated, was previously held in private hands. He boards her on September 22, 1862. We have a copy, which perhaps will be seen at some point, showing the log of the ship. This is the log of the ship, showing the day that William B. Gould came on board, and showing all his comrades and who each one was owned by. Well, I thought that this was a great breakthrough in many respects when I found this log in 1989, a couple of decades after my research had begun with my father. My father had encouraged me to read the diary, and the diary put me in mind of my own father, temperamentally, and also his understated sense of humor, his commitment to equality, and his love of life itself. And so this shows when he comes on board with these other men, and September 27, 1862, in the diary itself, he said that this day we took the Pledge of Allegiance to Uncle Samuel. My book that I ultimately published in 2002, called Diary of a Contraband, was called Diary of a Contraband because, you see, these individuals are identified, these black individuals identified as contraband. Now, why were they called this? Today, we speak of contraband as property, seized property. And they were called this because the United States didn't know what to do with the first deserting blacks who came out of slavery from the South. Because Dred Scott, which had declared blacks throughout the United States to be property and not to have the rights of human beings, was still the law of the land. This is a photo of the diary that he kept, the volumes of it on the side, and you get a sense of the way it looked. It was a great, I remember my father and I, when we began to talk about this in Long Branch in 1958 and 59, it was a sense of great excitement to us. You'll see if you read my book, and if you get a chance to examine the diary, which is now in the Massachusetts Historical Society in Boston, you'll see that he's a very literate man. Now, we don't know how this can be because at this time, blacks were prohibited from learning to read and write, not only in North Carolina, but in all the Confederate states throughout the Union. We do know that some New England missionaries visited from North Carolina from time to time, and others more expert in calligraphy than I say that that his handwriting resembles the way they wrote. By the way, not only is he a very literate and eloquent man, of course, being eloquent is God-given, but he is also has extraordinary penmanship. None of my students here at Stanford can have the penmanship that William B. Gould sets forth in this diary. Well, as I've said, he joins the Navy, and as he boards this USS Cambridge. And let me say a word about the Navy. The Navy, and this is one of President Lincoln's great inspirations, is to play 3 roles during the war, and William B. Gould is to be a part of 2 of them. Well, the caption just shown here a second ago is this is a good way to go on to show the number of Black Americans in the Navy. And the Navy, let me say, was played 3 roles. One, the one that William B. Gould was involved in, patrolling the southeastern coast, because they were trying to deny the entry of Confederate raiders coming in and delivering food, and materiel, which would be transferred to Lee's army in Virginia. And so part of the role of the Navy was to perform the so-called blockade. He was part of the North Atlantic blockading squadron. General Winfield Scott, the hero of the War of 1812, devised this strategy and was called Anaconda, to try to economically strangle the South. And he's involved in this as he patrols South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia in late 62, 63. The second role was to, which William B. Gould was not involved in, was to grab the waterways, the Mississippi River, the Missouri. That's why the Navy is so important. President Lincoln said, "I hope that God is on my side, but I must have Kentucky." And and the great victories of the United States are won first on the Mississippi by General Ulysses Grant, particularly at Vicksburg in 1863. And the third role that the Navy is to play is to pursue Confederate ships that are being built abroad by the Confederacy's allies, Great Britain and France. And he goes over there in search of those ships. Now, the role of, you saw a photo of the large number of Blacks on a ship. Some of you may have seen the movie Glory, which showed the first or one of the first black regiments in the United States Army during the Civil War. From 1793 through 1863, blacks were prohibited from being part of the Army. But this was never true of the Navy. Blacks were a seafaring people whose skills on the sea, and William B. Gould's skills seem to have been acquired in part before this war, were exercised before the founding of the Republic itself. And so blacks are always serving in the Navy, and they become part of the naval effort. 17,000 Black Americans serve for the United States Navy in the Civil War. 7,000 of them are escaping from the Confederate States. This is the silent exodus of Black Americans from the Confederacy. Perhaps equally and perhaps more significant than the Underground Railroad itself, because this exodus puts arms in the hands of blacks who will fight against the Confederacy. Now, the diary. You have here, this is an entry, one of the first entries in the diary. It's undated. It perhaps was written prior to William B. Gould's escape, The Negro and His Friends and Foes. And William B. Gould says, "We will now begin by looking into the past, far beyond the Declaration of Independence of '76 to that memorable day of 11 December, he says 1614, it's actually 1619, when 11 Negro slaves landed at Jamestown, Virginia, and ask you, was it for any act of friendship that those benighted Africans were torn from their loved homes on the free plains of Africa's shores and transferred to the wilderness of America? Was it an act of friendship that those Dutch traders exposed those Negroes for sale? Was it an act of friendship that caused them to buy those misfortunate ones, to make them the hewers of wood, the drawers of water, to clear their land, and to build their cities and to feed their mouths? And from the doings of that eventful day spring all the evils of slavery in this country. From that day's work spring the," and here the passage in the diary is incomplete, but that gives you some sense of the man. Before we go beyond that last photo, which shows the number of blacks in the Navy, I just want to read a quick quote from his experiences on the North Atlantic blockading squadron, when he says they're coming near Fort Fisher in North Carolina. He said, "Some of the shots are coming too close to be at all agreeable." This is what he says in the diary. He says, the rebels have done some very close shooting, showed they knew their work. And then in mid-November of 1862, when the Cambridge happens on a Confederate ship, he laconically writes, "We told them good morning in the shape of a shot." And he notes of a later engagement that they bore down and sent our respects from our ship's gun, the Parrot. And here we have a photo of the Anglo-African magazine. William B. Gould becomes a correspondent, a writer for this Anglo-African magazine, which is published in New York City. We learn a lot about William B. Gould, and we see a lot in this diary from his work for the Anglo-African. And in the spring of 1863, his ship moves north because many of his comrades are from the north, and the Navy wants to give them a respite. And he goes to New York and visits the offices of the Anglo-African once his duties take him there. And he visits not only New York, but he visits Boston. And when in Boston, a number of things happened to him, but the most important of them is his reuniting with my great-grandmother to be, Cornelia Williams Reed, who was born in Charleston, South Carolina. Yes, there she is, Cornelia Reed, he sees her on Nantucket. And my son, William Gould V, is going to say a few words about that.
Sure. So Cornelia Reed has a very interesting story where the gentleman on the left is Reverend Crawford, who was in charge of a African Baptist church on Nantucket, and he arranged through contributions from both Europe and the United States. He arranged for Cornelia to be purchased out of slavery in 1858, along with her mother. And so Cornelia made her way across the country by railroad to ultimately coming to Nantucket. And there she was. Later, we'll see some photos that my dad will comment on where she and William B. Gould establish a family initially in Nantucket. So anyway, they shared about 64 letters during this time while she was, while William B. Gould served in the Navy. So I'll pass it back to my dad. There's more information about other relatives that we can certainly comment on if need be in questions and answers. But I'll pass it back to my dad to keep going.
Well, in Massachusetts, not only does he reunite with Cornelia Reed, whom he said in his pension papers. This is the way to start research. If you're looking at a Civil War veteran, look at the pension papers that they may have filed seeking a pension subsequent to the war. In those papers, he said, "I've known her since she was a child, and she was born in Charleston, South Carolina, but had been brought to Wilmington subsequently." Well, in Massachusetts, William B. Gould joins another ship, the USS Niagara. Here you have some photos of the Niagara. This is what appears on the front of the ship. This is her mast. These pictures are taken in Europe, which is going to involve most of the USS Niagara's work. But before he goes to Europe in the Niagara, the Niagara is going to be called upon to rescue an Italian ship caught in a great storm. His ship, the Niagara, becomes involved in this storm. And here is what William B. Gould says about that storm on the Niagara in March of 1864. He said, "All last night we went before the gale, under double foretopsail and storm staysail. Our main topsail has blown to ribbons. I got ducked awfully last night, but it was worth something to be upon the deck. Although there is much danger in a storm, there is something very sublime in one, to hear the roar of the storm, the hissing of the waves, the whistling of the rigging, and the cannon-like report of the torn sail, and above all, the stern word of command and the shrill sound of the boatswain's pipe, all adds to the grandeur of the scene. For there is something grand in a storm. All night with eager eyes, both officers and men paced the deck, watching our foretopsail, feeling in a measure secure so long as we could carry sail at all, and it has stood through the night. But there is no sign of the storm abating. All the galley fire is out, and nothing to eat is the cry, and almost nothing to wear on account of the water. Shine out, fair sun, and smote the waves, that we may proceed on our course and all be saved." And they are saved. The New York Times, in describing this rescue of this Italian vessel, said they were delivered from the very jaws of death, in describing this particular initiative of the USS Niagara. Well, on June 1, 1864, the Niagara sets off for Europe to look for these vessels that are being built by the Confederates. And this is one of them. And he sketches, we'll come to this later, he sketches this in his diary, the Stonewall. But they are initially looking for this ship, the Alabama. You know, not a lot is known about the role of the Navy in the Civil War. But one thing I think school children learn about is the Alabama, which sailed through a number of oceans and was and raided American merchant marines during the war, and caused havoc for the United States. And listen to what William B. Gould says on June 24, 1864. He says, they're going up the English Channel. He said, we, at about 3 bells, we took on board an English pilot who brought us the thrice glorious news of the sinking of the Alabama by the sloop Kearsarge. There's the painting by Monet in the Philadelphia Museum of Art showing that sinking. He said, well, we're glad that we have some disappointment that we didn't get a shot at the Alabama, but we are satisfied that she is out of the way. And years later, on the 50th anniversary of the commencement of the war, he said that the crew in looking at that Alabama was almost as proud as if they had done the deed themselves. Well, they do get to do some deeds. In August of 1864, they are in the Bay of Biscay, near both Portugal and Spain. And he said, we're cruising off the coast of Portugal. This is a photo of the Belém Tower in Lisbon, which both of us have seen and visited. And a word about the Belém Tower in just a second. But he said, we're cruising off the coast of Portugal. We saw many sails, but at 7 o'clock, we saw a steamer and stood for her. She kept on course until we got within 5 miles of her, and she changed course. We beat to quarters and fired a shot. She showed the English colors. We fired another one. When she came to, we boarded her and found her to be the rebel privateer Georgia, on her way from Liverpool to refit as a cruiser. But the next cruise that she makes will be for Uncle Samuel. She is a very pretty vessel. He said, this capture makes our crew feel very proud. And they said that they shipped in her to go to the coast of Africa, but they made a short voyage. And this is one good deed for the Niagara. And we hope that there will be many more. And then he talks about the fact that we will now take a look for some of the other vessels, cruisers of would-be King Jeff. In the Anglo-African, in his diary, he's always speaking of Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy, whom he later says that when they capture him, we hope that they hang him from the highest tree, which is what they had sung about during the war. And he talks about Jefferson Davis as would-be King Jeff. They pursue the Stonewall. You saw the drawing of that he makes in his diary. She is an ironclad. You know, at this time, most vessels are made of wood, but the Confederates were early in creating ironclads, which gave them an advantage at sea. And the Niagara had another ship, from the Union Navy, the Sacramento, working with her in attempting to get this Stonewall. They don't get her. They go in and out of ports looking for her in both Lisbon, where they're fired upon by this Bellum Tower because the Portuguese have a neutrality law which says that the Union and the Confederate navies have to wait a certain period of time before leaving. They don't want these fights on their shores. They do get into hand-to-hand fighting. Some of the sailors on the Niagara with those from the Stonewall. Well, William B. Gould is in Cadiz, Spain, on the shore of Spain, when the news of Appomattox comes to him in 1865. And listen to what he says in Spain while he's involved in this naval initiative about Appomattox. He said, "On my return on board, I heard the glad tidings that the stars and stripes had been planted over the capital of the defeated Confederacy by the invincible Grant. While we honor the living soldiers who have done so much, we must not forget to whisper for fear of disturbing the glorious sleep of the many who have fallen, martyrs to the cause of right and equality." Martyrs to the cause of right and equality. This is what William B. Gould stood for, and this is what he fought for, and this is what he escaped slavery for. Well, his ship then, the war isn't over completely, and they are still looking for Confederate ships during much of 1860, but eventually they come back across the Atlantic, not as quickly as William B. Gould would like, and some of his comrades would like, although he understands the needs of the commander. And he, on September 29, 1865, his ship comes into Boston, Massachusetts, into the Charleston Naval Shipyard. And we have in the book the picture of the building in which he received his discharge. It is still standing now. He says, "I'm at the Naval Yard in Charlestown. At 5 o'clock, I received my discharge, being 3 years and 9 days in the service of Uncle Sam." Here he uses Uncle Sam rather than Uncle Samuel. And he said, "And glad I am to receive it, paid $4.24. So ends my service in the Navy of the United States of America." And that is where the diary ends on September of 1865. That is the last day of his service, and is the last day of his diary. But a new life is beginning to unfold for William B. Gould. And in November 22, 1865, he marries Cornelia, whom you see there immediately to our left, his right. And they eventually have 8 children. I knew them all except for, including my Aunt Dora, who's on the far right, who was born in Nantucket in 1866. I didn't realize at the time that I knew her in the 1940s what history she had seen. Now we have here at Stanford some of her books. And so here, this picture we think was taken around the 1880s. And what William B. Gould is doing when he settles in Dedham, Massachusetts, immediately south of Boston, he is to play a number of roles. One, he is to use the skills that he acquired in the Confederacy, a plasterer, a mason. In fact, ultimately, he becomes a contractor of other of other men. The Bellamy Mansion is one of the great, elegant antebellum mansions in Wilmington, North Carolina. And as I did my research in the 1990s, one of the curators uncovered in the slave quarters a piece of plaster with William B. Gould's initials on it in that same way that it appears in the diary. This is one of those very chilling moments at the time of research of this kind, the Bellamy Mansion. And we have been now in front of the Bellamy Mansion, there is a sign commemorating his work on the, there it is, they just put that up. This is the plaster that was found in back of the Bellamy Mansion, and that sign that you just saw was just put up in 2018 when they created a special road sign to honor William B. Gould, and had a ceremony in front of the Bellamy Mansion. He is the second role he's to play is to as an active person in the Grand Army of the Republic, the great veterans organization. And by the way, before going on to his work in the Grand Army of the Republic, I just want to say his work as a plasterer, if you ever go to Dedham, you will see a very tall cathedral-like church, the Roman Catholic Church, St. Mary's. He did the work in the 1880s on that grand church, which is not too far from where he and all the Goulds who went before me are buried right near that, in a cemetery right near that church. So he does work as a contractor. He's involved as a leader in the Grand Army of the Republic. He becomes a commander of the Grand Army of the Republic in Dedham in 1901. And my father used to, three William B. Goulds were living next to each other. William B. Gould, William B. Gould Jr., who's on the far left, who died before I was born also, and my father, William B. Gould III. And my father told me many anecdotes, a number of anecdotes about his experience with all these men who are in this photo. And I knew all of them except William B. Gould Jr. And then finally, what he does when he comes to Dedham in the 1870s is to help form the Episcopal Church. And there are pews in the Episcopal Church, the Church of the Good Shepherd, that bear the names of these individuals. This is a grand photo of him with his sons together in 1917, which first appeared in the NAACP Crisis magazine. So all of these gentlemen serve in one war or another. William B. Gould Jr., third from the left on this photo, serves in the Spanish-American War. And the other five men serve in World War I, and they are in France, fighting for the United States during World War I. And William B. Gould is quoted in the Dedham newspaper as saying, "I expect to hear some very good things from those boys." And then finally, my father, William B. Gould III, to whom this book is dedicated. This is a picture of William B. Gould in his commander's uniform. Here's my, you had just a second ago the photo of my father when I was a small child, and a photo of him as a small child. And the book is dedicated to him because he, like William B. Gould on the written page, from personal experience, inspired me. I say in the book, he was the greatest man that I ever knew. And when he was accepted into the Hall of Fame at Camp Evans, I came and gave a speech 3 or 4 years ago at Camp Evans in Belmar, and I said, I've met President Clinton, I served in his administration. I've met President Obama. I've met Nelson Mandela in South Africa. William B. Gould III is the greatest man that I ever knew, and to a very substantial extent, to the extent that I've accomplished anything in life, I owe it to him and to my mother from the inspiration that they gave me in Long Branch, New Jersey. My hope is that the story of William B. Gould and the story of William B. Gould III will be an inspiration to so many young people of all ages and all colors and all races throughout the United States and the world. And let me say what a great pleasure it is to return virtually to New Jersey and to revisit that portion of my roots. Thank you very much for your attention.
I'm just unmuting my mic. Hold on one second. Okay, I want to thank both of you, Mr. Gould, number 4, and Mr. Gould, number 5, for sharing your beautiful family history with us. It is even that much more special that you have some roots in Monmouth County, and I hope I get to meet you in person sometime soon. I want to thank all the people that put so much time into planning this seminar, including Barbara Ryan, Janet Slocum, Tara Williams, and Carmen Flores. On behalf of Judge Thornton, I want to thank everyone who's taken the time to participate in this very special presentation, including other judges, staff, school children, and the general public. I hope you found this discussion to be as enriching to me, as enriching to you as it was to me. So everybody be safe. On behalf of the Committee on Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement, I wish everyone well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So there is a handout available, and we're going to invite our guests, if you are interested in receiving that handout, there is going to be a link to carmen.flores@njcourts.gov where you are able to request the copy of the handout. And we have a moment or two. There was one question here. There are several comments and some questions, but when people of color were labeled as contraband because the U.S. did not know how to classify them as escaping slaves from the South, when did that change that people were no longer called contraband? If you can answer that.
I believe they were no longer called contraband after President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, which took place on January 1, 1863. That resolved, at least by executive order, the status of Black Americans in the states which were in rebellion against the United States. It did not prohibit slavery. It did not establish the rights of Black people throughout the United States, and that was not done until the great constitutional amendments, post-Civil War constitutional amendments, the 13th prohibiting involuntary servitude, the 14th providing for equal protection, and the 15th provided for the right to vote.
Thank you for that response. And there are a lot of wonderful comments about appreciating you taking the time to share this information. That someone just thanked you for answering that question. And there was one other question. We have one more minute, not even quite a minute, but do you know if the Navy was segregated? You did share that Black African Americans were able to serve, but do you know if it was segregated? That was one question.
It was segregated by job occupation. When William B. Gould joined, he could only join as a so-called boy, which was the lowest level. Within a number of months, the next level was opened up to Blacks, a so-called landsman, and he advanced to that position. In 1864, he becomes a petty officer, not a full-fledged officer, a petty officer, which meant that he was in charge of the service of the food for the troops, a job that I don't think he particularly enjoyed. But that was so that it was segregated by occupation. And of course, all officers in the Army and Navy were white. Blacks were not part of the any part of the higher echelon until some point thereafter.
Thank you so much for responding to that. And we're really out of time. And I just want to thank everyone who attended today and all the wonderful comments. And thank you both, Mr. Gould, for attending today with us and joining Monmouth Vicinage to share your story. All right. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you.
And thank you so much. Remember, if you want the handout, email Carmen, CARMEN, Flores, FLORES, @njcourts.gov, and she'll share that handout with you. Thank you all again. Have a wonderful day. Bye now.
Thank you very much.